All right. I don't really like. It's the It's the Freddy sweater, and yet because it's winter and it's not Halloween, it looks like just a regular sweater, and I just see that when I look at the camera. That's the sigh, and a Star Wars hat, just whatever. Um, just in my quest to do this for entertainment purposes, and not for the purposes of that sport right there. Um, Let us move on to number 120. Just proof that sometimes I like movies that are designed for kids. Number 120 is Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. is a really fun movie. It came out when my kids were little. They watched it all the time. Thankfully, I didn't hate it. There's nothing more aggravating than when your kids gravitate to something that you find really aggravating, and it's got that squeaky voice that all little kid shows have. That squeaky voice character that every time their voice starts, you just want to bore nails into your skull until they stop. Yeah, Caillou is a good example. But anything on Treehouse. Anyways, Monsters Inc. doesn't really have that. It's a fun movie. There's enough jokes that are there for the adults in the crowd as well that it just keeps it entertaining and interesting, and it's a fun movie. 119. The last of the Lord of the Rings movies on the chart, Two Towers. Two Towers is the best of the Lord of the Ring movies. It's got the best battle, which goes on forever. Um, the actual climb by Smeagol and the Hobbits is fun. The sneaking comments are fun. Uh, Gollum really makes the whole movie, and Treebeard's fun too. The Ents are a lot of fun. They don't explain things well in the movies as opposed to the books, so why the Ents stay behind is a mystery in the movies. It's explained in the books. Um, but Two Towers is a fun movie, and for me, it's 119. And if it wasn't so bloody long, it would be higher. But they're very, very long movies. Man, and a creative and baffling title at the same time. Days of Future Past. So number 118, Days of Future Past, X-Men. Fun movie. It doesn't make any sense. Don't try to make sense of it any more than my writing skewing up this way. Um, I, I enjoy it. I've watched it a couple of times. Again, you watch the movie and you think, if they took Quicksilver with them and if they used him, they don't really need to worry about anything else. But Quicksilver only uses his lightning speed talents sometimes. In the rest of the movie, he just kind of stands around like a dick, like he did in First Class as well. And there's some fun stuff in Days of Future Past, and there's fun stuff um, with it being in the 70s. Of course, the idea was the next movie would probably be in the 80s, and then they went with Logan instead, which is fine. But for me, X Men: Days of Future Past is tons of fun, um, and it's really really interesting in how it hits the reset button, and it just mashes the reset button. And at the end of Days of Future Past, it sort of clicks where you go, oh, that's kind of cool, and then you go, wait, I sat through 5 movies for none of them to matter. Oh no. 117. This is a good movie if you like to hear an old lady swear. And who doesn't enjoy that? Lake Placid. The thing that makes Lake Placid work, other than heads being thrown at Bridget Fonda, is is Betty White swearing, cursing and swearing, and the giant crocodile is so much fun in this movie, and Betty White's cursing and swearing is so much. There's so much to be had in this movie. I really enjoy Lake Placid a lot, and it almost made the top 100. It would have if I just stayed with 100, but that's part of the reason I went to 200 because I'm like, man, I really enjoy this movie, but there's so many that are ready to knock it out. Oh, I've got to talk about it though because it is such a great little movie that sort of came out of nowhere. I love movies like this where you've got name actors, so you're going to make money on it. Bill Pullman's in it, for instance, but it's not this big budget machine kind of movie, and it's fun. It has the great line, "He just ate a cow, stupid." Great line, fantastic line. You get to see what would win between a giant crocodile or a helicopter. That's a great scene. There's a lot of good stuff. It's what Mega Shark and Giant Octopus and all those other stupid Sharknado movies want to be. Lake Placid is what those movies want to be, and they will never be Lake Placid. And then I know they released sequel. I know they released one sequel. I would imagine there's more. I never watched them because you can't really make a good sequel out of Lake Placid without Betty White, and you can't make a good sequel without the entire cast of the first movie. The entire cast is required. 116, proving once again that I do like kid movies. Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is a cute little movie that Finding Dory kind of ruins. Finding Nemo is perfect, and then for whatever reason, Pixar decided to start doing crappy sequels. It started with Toy Story 2, and Toy Story 2 is a good movie, but Finding Dory is just god awful, and finding it does kind of ruin some of the fun of Finding Nemo because you can't watch it again. Because there's moments in this movie that are really fun and sort of feel like they're off the cuff and spontaneous, and Finding Dory makes sure that they hit all of those same plot points so that it makes it look like Finding Nemo didn't actually have any of that in it. It really sucks the fun out of it. So it does take away from my desire to watch Finding Nemo again. It does. It actually did. It kind of took that away from me, and I don't like a movie doing that to me. It's not a lot of fun. Speaking of which, At 115 is a movie you've never heard of. It's called Fun. It stars Renee Humphrey and Alicia Witt. Alicia Witt has gone on to have bit parts in a lot of things. She was on Supernatural, I think, for a couple episodes. Tremendous actresses both, and the idea in the movie Fun is that they're two troubled teenagers, and they decide they're going to run away together. Well, if you're going to run away together, you got to have money. How do you get money? Well, you got to rob people. So, a robbery goes wrong. They both end up in juvenile detention. Half of the movie is them in black and white in juvenile detention. The other half is in color of how they got there. And it doesn't show you how they got there or which of the two girls is really a liar until right near the end of the movie. Because the whole way through, you're like, these girls have this bond and it's such a shame. And then as the movie goes along, you're like, well, one of these girls is lying. And at the end, you're like, oh, wow, was that girl ever lying? So you end up feeling really bad for one, although she was there when the murder took place, so you can't feel too bad for her because she tried to cover it up. And for the other one, you realize she's just crazy. But there's some tremendous acting in this movie. There's some tremendous performances all around. What a fantastic movie. I cannot recommend it enough. I would own it, except the DVD. The only one I ever see on Amazon is like $300 because it's imported and they don't make it anymore. When the movie was released, the funds were supposed to go to troubled youth. It's part of the reason why I originally bought a copy on VHS way back when, because I knew that a lot of the money that was being spent on the movie I bought was going to youth that were having those kinds of problems. It is very sensitive in how it portrays the subject matter. It doesn't glorify the violence when a murder takes place. You feel awful for the murder victim, and you feel awful for one of the girls coming out of it as well. And yet you can understand why they're probably going to be in juvenile detention for quite a while. And they're lucky that this movie was over 20 years ago. If it had happened now, they're both in court and they're both being tried as adults. So you can debate that as well when you watch this movie and look at that subject matter, but it's fantastic. It is one of those movies from the 90s that just slips through the cracks. You only find it at a dingy VHS rental store, and those don't happen anymore. So because they aren't around, you may have some challenge in finding the movie fun, but it is amazing. Number 114, going back to the 80s. One of my greatest crushes ever in movie history was Elizabeth Shue, and Adventures in Babysitting was a tremendous success for me. Adventures in Babysitting is one of those movies you can watch with your kids, grandkids, whoever, and it's really kind of timeless, even though it's very 80s in the way that it's done, and it definitely what Elizabeth Shue's wearing in this movie is very 80s, and her hair, but I still love her. Anyways, Adventures in Babysitting is a wonderful movie. It's fun. Don't watch the new one. They did a remake, which was The Babysitter or whatever you call it, or just they added a bunch of swearing and made it rated R, and it's like that destroys the whole point of the original Adventures in Babysitting. I think they end up in a strip club. I don't know. It just, to me, that doesn't feel like Adventures in Babysitting unless Quentin Tarantino directed it, and we don't need that. Um, Cute movie, very simple. Again, I much prefer the movies that are heavy in dialogue and storyline. There may be some hijinks like in this movie, but lots of explosions and stuff. Rewatchability is not there. This movie, though, I could probably throw it on today, and every kid in this house would watch it. Yvonne and I would watch it. It's a fun movie, and there's nothing wrong with it. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, kids. That's a kids movie, and they did a Disney version of it this past, I think, year or two. Other than the fact that the main actress in it, they picked a very attractive girl, and she's wearing the same jacket as Elizabeth Shue wore in this movie. It has nothing in common with it with Adventures in Babysitting, and it really doesn't have the humor. The humor just isn't there. So I cannot recommend people stay away from a Disney version enough. But hearing myself say that, I realize I probably don't need to tell people to stay away from Disney versions of mainstream movies. 113. This is a movie that is just hilarious to watch, and it's a shame that it has to be gory because, again, this is one that kids would really enjoy. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So we've all seen those horror movies where you've got your backwoods rednecks that are ready to kill and eat everybody, and they're bad. They're for the most part they're really awful movies. Wrong Turn's terrible. The Hills Have Eyes are awful. Most Texas Chainsaw movies are bad. Even the original. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. The only Texas Chainsaw movies that I like, they did the kind of sort of sequel with Alexandra Daddario a few years ago. I really enjoyed that one. And the reboot with Jessica Biel I thought was okay, and I own that one. But it's not something that I find I can watch again, and it's not something I put in here. But it's okay. It's got its moments. Although in that one, my problem with that one was there was too much sexual appeal in it for a movie of that kind of dark subject matter. I thought Jessica Biel was dressed far too scantily for what that movie was supposed to be, and it was distracting, and yeah, it didn't work. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. There's also a distracting half-naked woman in one part of it, but it is hilarious how it's done, and the idea that the rednecks look crazy to the college students, and the college students are convinced that these rednecks are going to kill them and going to eat them. It is so funny, and they show it kind of from the college students' point of view, and then from the rednecks' point of view, and it just it's hilarious, because the rednecks, Tucker and Dale, they don't have any homicidal instincts whatsoever, but these teenagers start dropping, and I'm not going to discuss how because it's too funny for words, but it's gory and yet it's fun. Yvonne watched it with me and she enjoyed it. There's a review on this channel for this movie. It is hilarious. It is so funny, especially when he's all nervous because there's a pretty girl and he's like, all right, I'm just gonna go over and talk to her, and he's got wasn't it a scythe? He walked over to the kids with a scythe and he was all nervous, so he just started giggling nervously.
Oh yes.
And it made him look completely psychotic and crazy. And the kids all ran away. It was so awesome. 112. We're going back to Fox Studios and their X-Men movie. X-Men is a movie I appreciate more now than when I originally saw it. The whole thing at the Statue of Liberty, all of that. There's so much fun to be had there. Magneto and Professor X is such a great dynamic. It is a crying shame that Disney didn't put Marvel and the Fox movies together sooner. I would love to have seen Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, with Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds. Those two together would have been absolutely on the floor hilarious in an R-rated movie together. And I realize that ship's probably sailed, but it's too bad because you could have both of them meeting with the Avengers now that they're all under one group. It just would have been awesome. I'm just throwing that in there. If you had, let's just throw this together. So you have Wolverine you have Deadpool, and then yeah, you could have Guardians, and anyways, yeah, and Iron Man. Uh, Tony Stark just going back and forth with Deadpool would have just been just amazing. So hopefully that happens at some point because Deadpool shouldn't be off on his own. And to end this part of the countdown at 111, I'm going to write just 2 words of the name of the movie, and people can get mad at me. Number 111 is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The Killer Rabbit is amazing. The French Taunter is amazing. It is overall a really good movie, but it does have some slow parts in it. There are moments in Holy Grail, even the first time I watched it, that I was kind of looking at my watch and does this, and it gets better. Every time something awesome happens, it's great. The other part that I have a problem with is The Nights That Say Knee has been overdone and over-reported, and there's so many jokes about it and so many different. I'm tired of it. So the Holy Grail would have been higher, but oversaturation in the marketplace of Holy Grail related materials definitely hurt it. So there you go. We've got the countdown done to 111. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I understand there's some in here that may throw people off. And the fact that I don't have a pure horror movie in these 10, I don't. So let me know what you guys think about that. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and I'll talk to you again soon.